Woodland. It is Miss Candleberry, and I'm going to teach you about something called chromatography. Now, if you are in Science Olympiad, you probably have experience with chromatography, but for most of us, we don't. So, first of all, I want to teach you just a teeny weeny bit, which is there are four kinds of chromatography. There's gas chromatography, there's thin paper chromatography, there is not thin paper, thin layer chromatography. There's liquid chromatography and paper chromatography, which we're going to do today. And chromatography is just basically when you separate substances or mixtures. So you separate mixed substances or mixtures into their individual parts so that you can analyze them. People use this like different kinds of chromatography in different ways. Like they use it when they, believe it or not, when they create vaccines, they use chromatography. When they test like food and food and drink and drugs, they use chromatography. And of course, they use chromatography in forensic testing. And forensic testing is the most likely way that you would be using paper chromatography. So forensic scientists, hello. Thanks for joining me. All right, we are going to use some household items. Well, one very important household item. And that is a paper coffee filter. Now, you can get paper coffee filters. They look kind of like, well, they usually look like this. They're in a little basket shape. Your parents, if they drink coffee, they probably have them. They might not be white, but these are cheap. This is like, I got like 100, or no, I got 200 for less than $2. So they're pretty cheap. So if your parents go to the store, they might actually buy you some to use. Hopefully, though, you do have them. You can't really use regular paper for this, just because it's best to use coffee filters. So you're going to need coffee filters. You're going to need some water solvent, so some water-based ink. And what kind of water-based ink do you probably have at home? Well, you probably have markers, Crayola crayons, like that, Crayola markers, not crayons, markers. Or maybe you have other water-based ink, like I have this pen is water-based ink. I know this one is. Those are all different water-based inks that I have. This is not a water-based ink. Meaning if I write on something with this ballpoint pen, it's not going, and then I accidentally wet it, it's not going to bleed. It's just going to stay the way it is. So you can't use a ballpoint pen for this. Really, what you probably want to use are just regular markers. And if you want to know if you can use permanent markers, not for this one, because we're going to use a water as our solvent, which means water is going to help us break up this mixture into its parts. If you were using something different called rubbing alcohol, then you would be able to do it with permanent markers. But we're going to stick with water soluble pen ink. All right. The really cool thing about this is it's going to teach you that the colors of, for example, your black marker or even your like purple or your gray. This color looks like black. But all black ink is made up of, believe it or not, different pigments, or different colors. All right, and we're going to get to see through this the hidden colors, the hidden pigments in our inks that we use all the time. Now, sometimes our basic primary colors, which you probably know from art, red, blue, yellow, those are pretty much just red, blue, and yellow. When you separate them, that's the color that they usually are that's in there. But as we get into secondary colors, like oranges and purples and greens and turquoises, those are going to have more pigments in them. All right, so now you know what you need. You also need something. I like to use these. These are my plastic straws. If you have, like my reusable ones, if you have regular plastic straws, you can use those. You can use a pencil, like I could use the actual pen I'm going to use for one of these. I could use this pen, but you need something that's going to hold the paper you're about to cut. And I also use these binder clips. Now, you might not have binder clips hanging around in your house, but what you might have is tape. Tape doesn't work as well as binder clips, but it does work. If you have a regular paper clip, you might be able to use those too. If your mom helps you, you might can bend it around there to hold it. All right. In fact, That's what they use at the middle school science Olympiad competition. They make a hook out of their paper clip. All right, so, but I'm going to use these, okay? I'm going to use this straw. I'm going to use a binder clip. I've got my coffee filter. And the other thing you're going to need is you're going to need something to put it in. So I'm going to hold this up on my face so you can see it. You can see the inside. It's a glass. It's got a little, when I say a little bit of water, I mean a little. You can't really see. But if I bring it up to my face, here is my glass. It's a pretty small glass. And here, down here is the water level. Let me see if I can move my arm. Do you see how small that is? You're going to put, you do not need a lot of water for this, friends. A very little. You just want enough. So there's a little bit at the bottom of your glass, whatever kind of glass. And no, you don't have to use a see-through glass. You can use, any kind of cup. You also can use a shallow kind of dish. This is like a little shallow dish. You can see the water in here. Again, there's not a lot. It's just a little bit. So the way that we do it in Science Olympiad is we hang our paper on this in our cup so it doesn't touch the sides, like kind of like that. All right, but if you don't have a straw or a clip, you can use a very shallow dish with a very little bit of water. You're just going to need to use more of more filter than you would normally. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these into strips. And I like to do this by, first of all, I want to flatten it out the best I can. All right, and I'm going to minimize my picture on this so that you can see more of what I'm doing. So I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to take my scissors, and I'm going to cut this little part off just to make it more even. Remember, because your coffee filters are circular, it's kind of hard to get them to be a straight line. Let's be. It doesn't have to be perfect. So I like to cut about an inch strip. You do not have to cut a strip that wide. You can make a smaller strip if you like. All right, so there we go. I've got now 4 strips. Some of them are straight. Some of them are a little bit wonky. That's okay. So I'm going to use this strip right now. So I'm going to choose an ink. Now I can choose, I'm going to choose, let's see, whoops, my clothespin went flying. So you can either at the bottom, you could do a dot like this you want to do near the bottom, not all the way at the bottom, but near the bottom, or that's the Crayola one, by the way. You can do, where I just put that, a line. It just kind of depends on what you like. You can do a strip or a line. Again, you don't want this to be at the very bottom because you don't want your ink that you're putting on here to sit in the water. You want the paper to be in the water. Basically, what's going to happen is the water is kind of going to absorb into your coffee filter using something called capillary action. It's the same kind of thing that helps a plant get water up to the higher branches from its roots. All right, so here we go. And I'm going to hold this. I'm going to have to make this bigger again. Bummer. So when you put this in here, look at how much can I raise. You want just a little bit to touch that water. You don't want it to be way down in here. You want just a little bit. So I can see that I need it to be about here. Right there. So I'm going to take my paper and I'm going to have to do this. So when I do this, I like to hold it up to the glass and compare. Let's see. Sorry. Not long enough on that side. So I got to bring it down some. This is a lot easier when you do it on the table. I'm just going to have it do it this way so I can show you. So this is about a good length. The paper just touches where the water would be. So now I'm going to take my binder clip and I'm going to clip this here. Now I'll show you how to do it with tape in just a moment. And then I'm going to take it and I'm just going to stick this down. I want to try to make it so my paper doesn't touch the sides. Oh, it's not quite long enough. I thought it was. So I'm just going to make it a little bit longer. I like to try to make it so that it doesn't touch the sides. All right, and there you go. And then I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm going to carefully move this to the side. And I'm going to show you how you would tape it. So if I was going to tape it, I would do the same thing where I figure out how long it needs to be. And then I'm going to tape the tape to a little bit of the paper, but mostly to the straw. All right, you don't take the paper to the paper because the paper is going to get wet. So kind of like that. I took a piece of tape and went boom and rubbed it down. So let me take another one. And I'm going to wrap it down. Now, this is a little bit harder because your paper will be delicate. And then if you're careful, and only if you're very careful, you can put 2 pieces of paper in at the same time. But here's the thing. You don't want the papers to touch each other. It's going to mess up your experiment. So you can put it in like that. I'm going to take mine out. I don't want to mess up this. I want to show you what happens. So chromatography also takes a little time. You've got to be patient. Now I'm going to show you the other way you can do it. If you do not have a straw or anything or a pencil and you don't have a binder clip, you don't have tape, you can still do it. So in the middle of my coffee filter, I'm going to just make a circle around the part right here that is normally the circle. So I'm just going to make a circle. It's not beautiful. All right, and then I'm going to fold it. I'm going to fold it. Oops, it's bleeding through on Miss Cumber's table. All right, and now I'm going to fold it the other way. I'm going to kind of keep folding it until I've got just a like this part. So here is where it gets tricky. I like to kind of, you want it to kind of, I'm going to fold it a teeny bit at the bottom to help it stand up. And then you're just going to take your shallow dish and you're going to put it in there. Now, this is going to work kind of fast. It would be better. You also can put it in a cup, and a cup would probably work. You can also stick this down in a cup, and I'll show you what I mean in a little while. So I'm going to leave that to set. While that's working, I'm going to show you some that I made. So something that's really cool that you can do, and that'll come out in a second, and I'll show you what it looks like. Something that's really cool that you can do is you can find different black markers that are water soluble or pens around your house, and I have these ones. I have these 4. I got the Crayola. I got this one that's called a Flare. I've got this one called a Sepia, and then I've got this one. It's a Pentel. So I've got all of these markers, right? All 4. And what I'm going to do, and pens, of course. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to dip 3 strips. I can see I already made 1. And then I went ahead and labeled it down here. So at the bottom, I labeled in an S in ink that would not dissolve in water, would not dissolve, but would not separate in water. So a non-water soluble ink, I wrote the S on. And then over here on this P, this one I used the Pentel one, and I made this one, and I wrote P with that one. And then on this one, I made a Crayola mark, and I wrote C. Now, the cool thing is, after they separated, I waited. So you're wondering, how does this relate to science? Well, let's say the police need to find out, they want to know who could have written something, or not even the police. Maybe you want to know who wrote a note to you, or something to that effect. What they can do is they can decide, they could say, hey, I wonder who wrote that. And then they can test lots of different color inks. The first thing they would probably do is say, is it water-soluble ink or not? I mean, is it going to separate in water or is it not? If it's going to separate in water, then they go, all right, let's find a lot of different water-soluble inks and let's test them all. Because believe it or not, even though they're all black inks, all black ink aren't the same. So I showed you that I did this. And just so you see, I'm going to show you what's kind of happening right now as it is. Oops. With this one. See, you can see now that it's starting to separate. That black dot is starting to separate into different colors. So I'm going to put that back very carefully. Don't touch the side. Don't touch the side. And this one is going a lot faster. So how cool is that? So if you look at this, it's still working. I kind of messed it up. You can see that this black ink has 2 main colors in it. It's got kind of, if you look down here, it's got like a reddish, it's got like a red. And then this up here is obviously you see it? It's a blue. I don't know if you can see it as well as I can see it, but it's super blue. It's like turquoisey blue. So the 2 colors in this black ink, in this Crayola marker, at least when I look at this coffee filter, are red and blue. And that's pretty cool. That's how they made it. All right. And in fact, after it set and did the whole time, this is what it looked like when I got finished. So you can see, this is one that was folded because it's still got some black parts right there. But you can see, here's this kind of purplish, reddish color, pink color. And then here are the blue colors you can really see from that black Crayola marker. That's basically this after it's done all the way to the edge, and I just set it out flat to dry. But I don't want to like kind of like that. But this one isn't done. It looks cool though. It looks cool. Now I've made a mess of my table. All right. While our official chromatogram. Oh, by the way, that's what we're making. We are practicing chromatography and we are making chromatograms. So that's the thing you make when you do chromatography. So back to what I was telling you about these different color inks. All right, so I went ahead of time and I set some of them. So I want you to look. This is this pen. This is the S pen. Look at it. You can see it's got purple, it's got yellow ink, it's got blue ink. It didn't quite finish, but I had to stop because it was taking so long. So all of those colors and pigments are in this black ink. This black ink, which is the P for the Pentel, look at this black ink. It has some yellow and it has some blue and it also has some red, but it doesn't look the same as this one when it separates. Look at that. It remains like a dark purpley color down here, and then it gets into some yellow and blue, but it separates in a different way because here's its dot and here's this dot. This one, as you will see soon, this one is our Crayola marker. And you can see this is a very light red all the way up. We didn't quite get the blues to come out yet because you could kind of see it better out of this one. This is the one we just did. So you can see it's starting to come. There's some red down here and the blue's starting to come up. But you can see that even though these are all black ink, look how different their chromatography paper is. And finally, our flare pen, it starts, that's this one, really red, and then it goes into some yellow, into some blue. But look how different all of these inks are, even though they're all black, which is pretty cool. So if you were a scientist and wanted to know who wrote a note in a certain ink, you might test all these inks and the ink from the note, and whatever ink separates in the same way as these inks do, then you know that that's the thing that your culprit wrote the note with, which is pretty cool. All right. So you, in fact, could have your mom do something like that. Maybe you could have her make one, and then you test other the black pens and markers that you have at home to see which one matches. You can be a little bit of a forensic scientist too. All right. So I showed you this. I kind of showed you what they look like. Here's the Crayola one that we did at the start. It's starting to separate, but it hasn't had a lot of time. I'll probably leave it in there longer. I did other ones too. So to show you, I did one. This is a purple. So I started with it here. When it got to here, I took it out, I let it dry, and then I did this side with black. So I made a purple mark here and a black mark here, and I did a two-sided one. This one, believe it or not, was a different color, a different Crayola color. I don't want to spill it, but it is not a pretty Crayola color, and look at how cool it looks. I did try to separate, this one, I did a whole bunch of different colors, you can't tell, and like in a row. So I did a black, I did a purple, I did a green, a yellow, and I wanted to see what they look like. And here is my dot with orange, and I noticed that orange just has a little bit of yellow, but mostly it's orange, which is kind of cool, although I didn't leave it forever. So those are all different kinds of things that I did with my chromatography. Now, what do you do with these papers after you finish? Well, you always can make something. And I so what I did was, when I finished with this guy, I put it in a bowl. I put it in a bowl so it would have that, ooh, this one's really wet. I put it in a bowl so it would get that shape that it started with, all right? And when it dried like this, which is kind of like what it started with. And then I started, to make something with it. So I used all my strips from my chromatography, and I just took, that's my tape dispenser, sorry. My tape dispenser, and I started to tape them on the inside of this. Now, this is not the only thing you can make. This is just what I thought to make. So I'm going to tape some, here we go. I'm going to tape them. That piece of tape didn't separate. All right, and now, all right, dee-dee-dee. Haha. And now I have made a jellyfish, which you can't see, but here. So science and art together. You can do all kinds of cool stuff with it, but that's just what I thought of. In fact, I would like to give my jellyfish face, even though I know jellyfish pull their don't really have faces, but this jellyfish does. And then I'm also going to, I had this random piece of string. I think I'm going to tape a piece of string to the top. I've kind of squished my jellyfish out. I'm going to have to fold him back together so he looks more jellyfishy shaped. But now I've got a jellyfish that I can hang. It's a jellyfish mobile. I can hang him, or I wish that I hadn't smushed so hard. I can hang my jellyfish mobile, or I can use it as a puppet. Whatever I like. So there we go. That is not only how you can make a paper, do some paper chromatography and become a forensic scientist, but also how you can use those things that you made to make something cool. Oh, I showed you a jellyfish. I didn't show you the other thing. I'm trying to bring it in front of. There we go. He's having a hard time. He keeps turning around. I forgot the other thing. The other thing that people use these kinds of these big filters for is a lot of time they make butterflies. So you do this, and then you can either fold it or you can just gather it. You can like loosely gather it, but it's probably work easier if you fold, but by pinching it back and forth in the middle, right? And then you have this. My clothespin flew away. That's what I had. I had a clothespin for the middle. So you put a clothespin in the middle of here, and mine flew way. I don't even know where it went. It flew off. I had it clipped somewhere. But here, I'll have a sad butterfly. You can put a clothespin on there, and you can make yourself a butterfly with different colors. So cool. I hope you enjoyed this scientific, crafty lesson. And I hope that you try it at home and post and tweet me or post to your dojo all the cool things that you have either done with your chromatograph. You can share the science you've done. You can also share the things you create out of them. All right. Happy Thursday, Wildcats.